What's wrong with that?
It's illegal, number one, and number two.
What law? What law says that?
Do you want me to give you the specific statutes in Georgia, Arizona, New Jersey? I don't know them off the top of my head. If you want, you can.
Okay, so then that's a baseless claim.
Destiny, can you define fascism? If you have the central power of the most mighty military on planet Earth, you already have all of the central power, bro.
Really?
Yeah. And one of the guys who died there, you don't even give a shit. And I've said this multiple times. And at the same time, you're like, oh, I love America. What kind of bullshit is this, Destiny?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
when you guys start taking...
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be reviewing the most recent Jubilee video where Destiny is surrounded by a bunch of conservatives, one of which, of course, being a friend of the channel, Andrew Wilson. And there is a little bit of a backstory about how all of this came about, which I will reveal later in the video. So I don't really like this format, if I'm totally honest. I mean, from a debate analysis perspective, it's very sloppy. I think there were a few standouts. There were a few people that did it pretty well, but also some of the moments where everyone was clapping and thinking that they just owned Destiny, they were just appeals to emotion. They were strawmanning his position and quite frankly, just going for personal attacks. And that's why I don't really like this setting, because those sorts of things are very easy to get away with in an informal setting like this with the short time constraints. And honestly, they wouldn't go so well in a proper debate. So anyways, with that, let's get into the first exchange where Destiny claims that Donald Trump is not fit to be US president.
Hey,
Steven. Micah. Okay, I want to talk about the alternate slate of electors and how historically that has happened before on the Democrat side. Yes, it has. In 1960, JFK against Nixon ran an alternate slate of electors in case it was overturned in Hawaii. It was eventually overturned in Hawaii, and so then those electors were certified, and JFK won the state.
So I'm glad you bring this up real quick, because this is one of the biggest pieces of shit talking points that you guys always bring up, and I don't know why. In 1960, two slates of electors were authorized by the state legislature. Both were granted the certificate of ascertainment from the governor because they knew that it was a very close election and they'd authorized a recount, and because that recount was going to go past the some mid-December date. It's December 14th for the 2020 election, but some mid-December date for when they had to certify their vote. So they said, okay, well, we'll send in both certificates, and then on the day of the counting, on January, whenever they would have done the certification in Congress, then they can choose which one was authorized by the state legislature based on the results of the recount. Donald Trump's certificates were not authorized by any state legislature.
Well,
do you acknowledge that? Wait, real quick. Do you acknowledge real quick that none of the 7 slates that were sent by Donald Trump, none of those were authorized by any state legislature?
Can I answer?
You're not going to.
No, I am. No, I am.
Conversation.
No. They weren't certified, and why? It's because fraud wasn't found. It wasn't proven in court.
No, you're
so
lying.
Fine.
You're lying. They
Wait,
weren't authorized.
So you're saying fraud was found?
No, you're lying because those legislatures.
Wait, what do you say I'm lying about?
They're lying because none of those alternate slates were arranged by the state legislatures. They were arranged by Trump and his criminal co-conspirators. None of the state legislatures, none of the state governors authorized those slates of electors.
Okay, what's wrong with that?
It's illegal, number one, and number two.
What law? What law says that?
You have laws that are governing how you're supposed to transmit.
What law? What law?
Do you want me to give you the specific statutes in Georgia, Arizona, New Jersey? I don't know them off the top of my head. If you want, you can.
Okay, so then that's a baseless claim.
It's not a baseless claim.
Yeah, it is.
Chesbro and Eastman.
You can't provide me a specific law.
Because I can't give you the state statute?
Yeah, if you can't give me a specific law, then why should I believe you? There's no justification for that. You have to provide evidence for that.
Hold on. On the contrary, are you claiming there's no formal process that's codified in the legislature for how to send transmit your electoral votes? Do they just do it randomly?
No, of course I'm saying, of course there's laws that are involved, but you can't point to the specific law that says that is.
I don't know the numbers.
And so your claim is baseless.
It's always crazy to see that you guys will carry water. Even Trump's own people don't deny this because they know that they're dead to rights, because the emails have leaked, the conversations have leaked, the Twitter posts are there that we can see from their accounts.
No.
Really, what did I just say that was wrong? What one thing that I just said that was incorrect?
You're getting upset because I'm pressing you on.
No, I'm not. You're not pressing me at all.
Yeah, you're getting upset.
Floundering.
Dude.
You're like a magic carp. You have no idea what you're talking about.
When you have to resort to personal insults, that's when you know you're losing.
You already said that I was lying. So you can't name a single thing I'm incorrect about. I can name multiple things you've been incorrect about. You were incorrect.
And now you're not letting me get a word. I think you're just speaking for yourself. You're making yourself look foolish.
Okay, go ahead.
But okay, yeah. I mean, there's 10 seconds.
Go. Give me your hardest claim.
Again, it was for the same reason. You can compare the election of 1960 to 2020. It's the exact same thing. They did that in case their cases actually came to fraud.
That's
and they
time.
found fraud in the election.
That's
So solid work by Micah there. I mean, well done. It's not the best moment for Destiny when he doesn't know that specific law, and the optics aren't very good. However, I definitely wouldn't call it a slam dunk moment, because saying that would kind of be a little bit like the "you're wrong, so I'm right" fallacy. Just because Destiny doesn't know the specific law doesn't necessarily mean that he's wrong. And it's tough to know the exact laws, but that is the risk you run when you say with such confidence and such chutzpah, to be quite frank, that Donald Trump was doing something illegal.
It's illegal, number one, and number two.
What law? What law says that?
So L there for Destiny, W there for Micah. But I would say that Destiny took an even bigger L when he starts spurging and filibustering when he's pressed on something. I mean, there's no shame in just saying, I don't know what the law is, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I'm sure Jubilee will fact check me, or something like that, rather than getting irate. But anyways, guys, it's not easy to stay armed and dangerous these days, especially with all of the crap flying around from the mainstream media, which is why I'm glad to introduce the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. In today's media landscape, staying informed and avoiding propaganda is genuinely very difficult. And with so many misleading narratives, how can we trust the news? Well, let me introduce you to Ground News, your go-to app and website that gathers tens of thousands of articles and sources from around the globe, all in one place. Now, every morning, my first point of call is to go to Ground News and see what's happening around the world. And my favorite feature is the blind spot feature. This allows you to see which stories are not being reported by left, right, and center. As you can see here, perfect example, Democrat Bob Casey embraces Trump trade in new Senate ad, being reported 0% by the left and center. I wonder why the left wanted to stifle that story. Furthermore, we can see Trump leading Harris in all major swing state polling averages as campaign hits home stretch. And when we click into these stories, we can see how they're being reported by left, if they're being reported at all, center, and right. And guys, I've been using Ground News for years, since way before I ever had a single YouTube subscriber, and when I was going through a blonde phase. Here's the proof from 2021. An interesting one that I follow is called Ground News. And here's the best part. For the month of November, Ground News are offering a massive 50% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use. So all you gotta do is hit that QR code on the screen right here, or go to ground.news/rattlesnake. That's ground.news/rattlesnake, and stay armed and dangerous with a comprehensive news diet. Let's get back to the video. So guys, on to the next bit now, where Destiny has the audacity to make the claim that Kamala Harris would be better on border and immigration than Trump.
I'm glad we agree that there's a problem with the asylum system. And I actually...
Well, we don't agree. I think that, but...
Well, I'm agreeing with you that there's a problem with the asylum system.
Okay.
I actually think you care. I've been following you for a while. I actually think you deeply care about this issue and how it's affecting the American people. I do believe that sincerely. What is for the tens of millions of folks who are going to watch this video, just what does asylum as a process represent to you? What does it mean to qualify legitimately for asylum?
To legitimately qualify for asylum, there's like official characteristics for it, but basically the place that you're fleeing, you're being persecuted for some characteristic or trait that we think that you obviously shouldn't be persecuted for, and you're facing like severe threats to your existence. And so you have to flee the country, and then you're basically coming to the United States saying like, I'm basically stateless, I can't go back to my home, like me or my family's at risk, and can you, basically take me in and me become a citizen that way, basically.
That's exactly right. You're fleeing racial, religious, ethnic persecution. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Poverty wouldn't count as asylum. It's a fact. Poverty doesn't count. You have to be fleeing a particular type of persecution. If poverty is a coincident factor there, but the persecution is key.
Sure, I'm gonna hesitantly agree with you, but like let's say you're facing poverty in like Syria, where it's like a collapsed state, then it's like I can see that being different. But in general, yeah, if you're just poor, you probably shouldn't be able to come here and seek asylum for that. I
Absolutely.
agree with that.
And so that's why 90% of asylum claims are rejected. Let's talk about Remain in Mexico. You brought up that you think it was a failure, it seems.
Yes.
Why is that?
One, I think there were a lot of lawsuits in the United States that were starting to look promising, I think, in terms of overturning it. I think the ACLU had gotten a victory in the 11th Circuit or the 9th Circuit. And then also because just the number of people that were being kept out from Remain in Mexico, I want to say the total number over, I think it was like 3 years, was like 30 or 40,000. It wasn't that many altogether.
But isn't that actually a sign of its success because it was a successful deterrent? Think about it this way, Stephen. If you got people who are fleeing religious persecution and you got folks who are fleeing poverty, the people who are actually fleeing persecution, they will happily go to Mexico and wait for 6 months for their case to be heard.
I don't know if that's always the case.
Well, but
if you're fleeing and you literally have nothing, you're like a destitute family, and now you're sitting on like a border town, like waiting months and months, maybe for your.
But that's better than religious persecution in Syria, right? I mean,
it might be, but ideally in the United States, we could process you almost immediately, and if you have a legitimate claim, we can house you here.
Absolutely, right? But how do we keep the fraud out of the system? I thought remain in Mexico, wherever you are politically, was a good way to do that. The idea was that if you're actually fleeing persecution in Syria or in East Asia or in Africa, you would be 99% better off in that camp in Mexico where it is protected, where you have food, where you have humanitarian resources. That keeps the fraud claims out. And so to this bipartisan border bill, well, first and foremost, 9 Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren, actually voted against it. So Donald Trump didn't kill it. Donald Trump was opposed to it for the same reasons that many Republicans and some Democrats
to be clear, would that
were
bill have
opposed to it.
passed? Would that bill have passed without Donald Trump telling Republicans not to vote for it?
No, it would not have.
Okay, that's completely and totally incorrect. But
What's your
people
proof
can
of
look
that? Well, listen, let's just talk about the substance of it.
Well, the proof is that like it would have passed. People like McConnell, people like Cruz are literally saying like we're not voting on this bill because Donald Trump has told us to pull the plug on it. But the idea was that it was going to pass.
So what would that bill have done to deter the fraudulent asylum claims that are keeping out legitimate folks who are fleeing persecution?
Well, I think that right now the biggest, there's an amalgamation of laws that make it so that because the asylum system is so backed up, I know that if I go to the United States, even if my claim is total bullshit, I can run to a port, claim that I'm an asylum seeker, and I know that they can't process me right now, so I get a slip saying, okay, we'll come back to court in a year or two, and it's like, I'm in, and you're done. At that point, you just disappear, right? But if they could process you almost immediately, you show up and you're like, hey, I'm a asylum seeker. It's like, oh, cool, we'll come talk to the judge. You're like, okay, well, fuck me. Then the motivation to come in and try to get in fraudulently that way, I think, dramatically decreases. And one of the big things that the bill helped with was providing a lot more judges that would be allocated for these things and a lot more funding for it, et cetera.
So just to correct that point, there weren't actually judges. They were funding custom officers who don't have law degrees, who are biased one way, who are more likely to approve asylum claims that might end up proving fraudulent. I think.
Wait, hold on. Who processes the asylum claims? Eventually, you have to sit in front of a judge.
No. And just clearly here, customs officers under the bipartisan border bill would be then given authority to process these claims. They don't have law degrees. They aren't judges. Judges typically kick these cases, but in this particular bill by Langford, it would actually be customs officers.
Customs officers would make the final decision on whether or not a person gets into the
And that's
country?
how you build up capacity, because you couldn't hire more immigration judges. There aren't enough people in the country to take those
I think you can. I think the issue is that the judge number has been capped since, I think, the 80s or the 60s in terms of how many judges are allowed to hear these claims. So we haven't had more funding that was allocated
Why
towards
not
actually.
bring back remain in Mexico? It absolutely works, Stephen.
Because I don't think it necessarily works, number one, because not that many people were kept out. And number two, even as a matter of policy, I don't know if the idea to the country to the south of you was like, hey, listen, there's not people coming to asylum, we're going to go ahead and store them in your country while we wait and process it. I don't know how even Mexico would feel about that. I don't know if the conditions would necessarily be safe for those people either. Because I thought that one of the claims that I heard so much from the Trumples was how unsafe all of these like border towns had become because of so many people building up there. So why would you want to stick a legitimate asylum seeker there and keep them there? Would you agree that if somebody was coming here to legitimately seek asylum and it was a legitimate case, they would probably be good to take them in and house them immediately?
In an ideal world, absolutely. But we need to also separate those who are abusing the system. Again, 90% of those claims are fraudulent. But
shouldn't we increase the funding to process those claims as quickly as possible?
I think the deterrent is better in Mexico. But Stephen, let's agree to disagree, okay?
Okay.
So he did well there. Smart guy, very well researched. And honestly, I would bet anything that this guy has watched a lot of Vivek Ramaswamy and has studied Vivek a lot as well, because his cadence and his mannerisms are almost identical. I mean, it's either that or they share a lot of similarities in the way that they were schooled about debate. Maybe they went to a similar college or something like that. But speaking of Vivek Ramaswamy, and on this topic, he's been speaking recently about how the number one human attribute that the asylum system selects for is your ability to be able to lie. I mean, when you're seeking asylum, if you say that you're from a poor country and you're seeking economic opportunity, you won't get in. But if you're from that poor country and instead you say that you're at some sort of physical risk of harm, and that's why you're seeking asylum, then you will get in. So whoever lies is more likely to get in. Anyways, on to the next part where Destiny makes his most confusing statement of all, that Trump is a fascist. To which end, our friend Andrew Wilson steps up to the plate. And guys, I said there was a little bit of a story behind this. And the story is that Jubilee contacted me to be on this exact episode, but I just left the country. a few days earlier. But when I got the email, I thought I can't make it. And then I remembered that Andrew was in California for the whatever podcast. So I said to the people doing the casting, I can't make it obviously, but I know somebody who can.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
And the rest is history, and now here we are. So I'm not going to toot my own flute too much, guys, but it's basically, this is all my fault.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Destiny. Destiny, can you define fascism?
I would say the two big points for fascism would be ultranationalism and authoritarianism.
Okay, what is authoritarianism?
I would say that authoritarianism is trying to centralize as much power in like a structural sense into one part of the government, and then in a broader sense, it usually means undermining a bunch of liberal values that you would find, like, say, in the first.
So then how is it that every part of the government which accrues more and more power to itself every single year aren't a bunch of fascists?
Because the government gaining power doesn't necessarily make it fascist. You could say there might be governmental overreach,
I'm
but
still
it's
not even sure. What is fascist here, Destiny? What is fascist?
I said-
So Giovanni Gentili, we have definitions of what fascism is. We have third partyists who are out there right now who are fascist. They claim Trump is a populist. Can you tell me why they're wrong and why you're right that he's a fascist?
Well, I would have to know their exact reasons for why they reject Trump being a fascist, but I would say that Trump is
These
a
are-
fascist
they're
because I
your-
think he's an
Hang on,
ultranationalist
these are
and an
your
authoritarian.
claims. These are your claims,
I'm not
right?
claiming anything that those people
You
said. I've
claim
given you my
that
definition
he's-
for
you claim
fascist.
he's a
I gave the two parts. I can
Okay.
explain them more if you
So
want.
let's
and I
start
would think
with
that's why.
ultra-authoritarian.
Why I said ultranationalist and authoritarian.
What is ultranationalism?
So I think ultra-nationalism is when you engage in a hardcore protectionist ideology that usually involves shutting yourself out from the rest of the world. That could be in forms of international affairs like military conflicts, and it could be in the forms of ultra-protectionist in terms of trade and shutting down things like immigration in order to protect your own native peoples. Oftentimes there's a heavily racialized element, but there might not have to be.
Okay, well, Donald Trump, you're not saying has a heavy racialized element, are you?
I'm ambivalent. I don't really care that much. I think that he
Okay.
qualifies or satisfies the term without that, but
Okay, so let's dive into this real quick.
Just a quick one, guys. If you do want to help this video out because it doesn't get monetized, Jubilee doesn't let you monetize when you use their content, unfortunately. If you would like to help, you can smash that like button. You can also subscribe to the channel. It's going to be right below. And if you'd like to find me on all my other social medias, it should be right here. Jake Rattle SNK on Instagram and on X. So with that, let's get back to it.
If you have a president who doesn't want to get involved in foreign affairs as far as wars go and has some type of policies which benefit the United States over all other nations, is he a fascist?
no.
Well, I'm still confused as to what makes Trump a fascist.
That's because I had two parts of that, and you missed the authoritarian one.
Yeah,
What you
okay.
described there before was just like protection.
Well, when you said authoritarian, what is he doing, which is accumulating all power to himself?
So he's trying to centralize power in the executive branch of the government, and specifically in the presidential part of the government, of the executive branch.
How?
How Donald Trump thinks that he should be able to unilaterally make decisions up and down all of the different departments and offices that exist in the executive branch.
Presidents use executive orders all the time.
That's not what an executive order is.
Presidents unilaterally make decisions all the time.
No, they don't?
Yes, they do.
No, they
do.
don't.
They use executive orders all the time.
An executive order doesn't mean that you are taking power away from the departments and offices that have been created.
Right. So where's the fascism here?
Would you like me to give you specific
Yes,
examples?
give me the specific example.
Sure. So when Donald Trump didn't like the answer that he was getting from his attorney general because he was trying to direct the Department of Justice to do investigations or to fabricate claims, that would be an example of trying to centralize power just to the president because he's undermining his own department that's been created for him that's tasked, that's supposed to have some level of independence, that's tasked with doing investigations.
Let me ask you a question. Is the president of the United States the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States?
I believe so,
You believe so?
unless something's changed.
Do they
recently,
have
yeah.
do they have control of the entire military apparatus essentially as the
As
commander-in-chief?
the commander-in-chief, yes.
Yeah. Is that fascist?
No.
So they have basically almost unilateral control by your own metrics of the most mighty military on planet Earth. That's not accumulating enough power, centralized control to one person. It's the fact that he tried to slay some fucking electors. Really?
So the president being the commander-in-chief is specifically laid out in the Constitution. That's an
Yeah.
authority granted to him. I don't know what's fascist about
Well,
that.
because
from
you
the
said it's
inception of the
ultra
country.
power. It's this idea of
I
having,
didn't say
of having
anything about
central
the
power.
military.
If you have the
about-
central
I
power,
didn't ever bring that up for him, but
if you have the central power
Yeah.
of the most mighty military on planet Earth and the codes to the largest nuclear armament on planet Earth, you already have all of the central power, bro.
really,
Yeah.
how do the nuclear codes help you
Yeah.
direct your Department of Justice?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is he the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces? Which
Are
he
you
has
just
control of.
arguing that he's the commander? I already agree with you. I don't know why you keep arguing.
What I'm
this.
arguing to you is
I'm
that
asking you,
it
how does the
sounds to
commander-in-chief
me-
use the
you
military
don't get to ask
to
me.
make?
It's your claim.
Well, I can
I'm
ask whatever
asking
you
you
want.
about your claim,
So
and your claim is
how does that make
he's
him
a
control the
fascist.
DOJ? How does the military help him control the
So
DOJ?
back up. That is the most powerful position I can think of for you to be in. Period. How could
That's
you
a powerful
accumulate-
position.
what
That's a
more-
powerful-
What more accumulation of power would you want for a fascist dictator?
Gotcha. Okay, so that's powerful in that you controlled the military. That's it. That's just control of the military.
Yeah.
For the FBI coming to your house to arrest you, for the DOJ filing charges
said the
against
military
you,
to
for the
do it.
EPA, no, the president doesn't do that.
He
I don't know
could.
if no, I
He's
don't believe
the
that he can. I don't believe that you can. I don't think that you can deploy
Why
the
can't-
military to arbitrarily arrest
Why?
U.S. citizens.
You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
So, guys, if you watched my video a few days ago where JD Vance was pressed by a CNN anchor about Donald Trump being a fascist, then you would have seen me vent my frustrations that nobody ever asks these clowns to define what fascism is. What do you mean when you call somebody a fascist? But then we see this. My frustrations put to bed because finally someone asks, and of course it's Andrew, what these people mean when they call you a fascist.
Destiny, can you define fascism?
I mean, it is a relief, but in this setting, very hard to flesh this one out between Destiny and Andrew. They really need a moderator for this, and they really need time if they want to have this proper debate. But anyways, I think Andrew sort of recognizes this, and then he asks him his definition of fascism, and then he operates within Destiny's paradigm, within Destiny's actual definition, which is really the only way to have a moderately coherent back and forth in this setting. Anyways, just to highlight how difficult this conversation actually is to have, I want to go through the definition of fascism and the history and the philosophy of fascism and what it actually is in a little bit more detail. And also, this might help you guys if you hear that Trump is a fascist over the holidays this year. You can just say to them, hey, listen, what is fascism? And then you'll know that you're armed and dangerous with the facts. So here it is. So fascism is defined by A. James Gregor in Mussolini's Intellectuals as the totalitarian, cooperative, and ethical state. The first collectivist synthesis of nationalism, syndicalism, and actualism. So nationalism, we all know what that means, and the MAGA movement would fall into that category for sure. But syndicalism means revolutionary unions, where these unions and the workers can take control from the capitalist class. Definitely not a MAGA talking point. I mean, MAGA definitely does try and look after the worker. However, it's not in a revolutionary anti-capitalist type way. And then actualism, meaning actual idealism, a philosophy developed by the guy Andrew mentioned, Giovanni Gentile, who is the intellectual father of fascism in Italy. And I don't want to make this video too jargony and too boring, but idealism is essentially the notion, the philosophical notion, that reality is fundamentally mental or spiritual and that our minds create reality. And this goes all the way back to Plato and was expanded by people like Kant and Hegel. And it's actually the root of both Marxism, communism, and fascism. But the difference between Gentile with his actual idealism and the idealists is that the idealists believe that reality exists separate from our minds, but our minds shape and interpret reality. However, Gentile, with actual realism, he believes that our mind creates reality and that reality can't exist absent the mind or absent thought. So reality is brought into existence by the act of thinking itself. So I don't know about you guys, but I haven't really seen in the MAGA movement any ideas about reality being created by the human mind, and therefore the state is a human construct. So we are the state and the state is us, and man and the state operate in some sort of oneness, some sort of universal. I haven't really seen much of that. But anyways, Mussolini's Italy, which followed from the intellectual thought of Giovanni Gentile, actually was not a racist state and was not an ethno-nationalist state. This wasn't until later on, when the little mustache man came along, that the actual racism, anti-Semitism, etc. would creep in. So then the argument becomes, well, was Hitler a fascist? And then Hitler was very different to Mussolini in his ideology, or was Hitler a National Socialist, which is completely different to fascism? And there is a debate about that, but we won't go into it right now. So on to the next bit now, where Andrew and Destiny go at it again, this time the prompt being that the MAGA movement would not exist without disinformation. And Andrew ties him up like a pretzel.
So you talk about misinformation, but you've given us a ton of misinformation right now. You said, seems like nobody in MAGA even wants to talk about any of the issues of Donald Trump. Had multiple debaters come up, talk to you about multiple economic policies, compare and contrast them with Kamala, gave you great reason.
I don't think I heard any economic policy from Trump when he was in 4 years.
Okay,
What were
okay.
his economic
No,
policies?
back up. Now you're switching the claim. So what you just claimed is, I don't hear MAGA people talk about this at all.
I don't think I heard any
That's
policies
what
that were
you
brought up.
said, and
Yeah.
yes, they did. They
What were
brought
they?
up the capital gains policies. They also brought
What were the
up
capital
they
gains
also brought up
policies?
tariffs. They brought up the tariff policies. They brought up multiple economic policies. Total misinfo.
Okay.
Total misinfo for you to say they didn't. They absolutely did. Are you disputing that nobody here brought up any policies of Donald
I think that when you're talking policies from somebody,
Mm-hmm.
if the only thing you have are tariffs, it's not really a strong policy foundation.
I'm
to support
sorry.
somebody.
I'm sorry. Did you use the word any? You don't hear anybody talk about
I'm
that?
speaking like a human being right now.
Oh, but when
right?
Donald Trump speaks
So
like a
when
human
he-
being, he's a
Donald
liar.
Trump doesn't speak like a human being.
Yeah, he's
a moron.
Anytime.
I'm sorry, but Donald Trump speaks like an idiot.
So would you
Yeah.
say it's misinformation, for instance? Is it misinformation when you say that a firefighter who got murdered at a rally, when you laugh at that and you say that that's totally fine, are you spreading misinformation?
I don't know if
Are
I said
you-
that's totally fine. I think I said
Yeah.
I don't really have any sympathy. for
No,
people who
you,
get
no,
shot
you
at
didn't. You
rallies.
laughed about it. You thought it was funny. You didn't give a shit. You were under fire on Twitter for it for weeks until you finally backed
Okay,
away.
You can go find,
after
I
you
haven't
were
backed
shot.
away from any of those statements.
Yeah.
You can go find the
You
pictures
haven't
want.
backed away from any of them?
No, not at all.
You don't care that the guy died, right?
People died. Rallies
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, you don't care.
When this side is involved
But you
in
care
some of
about
the most
misinfo?
violent, divisive. Here's a
You
question.
care about misinfo?
Here's a question. That does not do with misinfo. Here's a question.
I'll
wait.
explain how it's
Wait. Do you
misinfo.
disavow any of the
Let me-
rhetoric about Paul
let-
Pelosi? Do you
let
disavow
me-
any of the rhetoric about Paul Pelosi?
What? Even if I made any outrageous claim possible, has nothing to do with your claim, which
Do you
is what
disavow any
we're
of
talking
that?
about. We're talking about your claim.
He
Stop
doesn't.
switching.
He doesn't. Of course not.
Stop
He doesn't
switching
acknowledge
the
what happened on
goalposts.
January 6th. He doesn't acknowledge
And
that
you're
people are
filibustering.
turning away
You're
FEMA
filibustering.
right now
Stop
because
spurging.
they're
Stop
convinced that
spurging.
the federal government's going
Stop
to take their
spurging.
houses.
Stop spurging.
You are, you just
Stop
engage in all the
spurging
time.
in
You
answer
can say
to
stop
the
spurging over and
question.
over again. I'm not here to
I'm
talk
going
about
to.
my tweets,
Are
but if
you
that's what you
ever-
really want to talk
are
about,
you-
you do it. I've
are you
tweeted
going
crazier
to
shit than that, I
acknowledge
promise.
Are you going to acknowledge that you said totally fine? You didn't care. You just said right now you don't
going
care.
fine. You can look at all my
How
tweets.
is it now? Let me explain how
What
it's.
does that have to do with
I'm
misinformation?
going to explain how it's misinformation.
Okay.
Because don't you think that if you make claims like Donald Trump is un-American, Donald Trump doesn't like the Constitution, and then you have an assassin come, he tries to kill Donald J. Trump at a rally, another American dies. Aren't you spreading misinformation by saying to people, this is okay? Isn't that
I don't think
un-American?
I've ever said this is
Isn't
okay.
it
I've said
un-American?
over and over again that there shouldn't be any political violence in the United
That's
States. It's
great.
not good.
That's
you can laugh.
great.
You guys are the ones that
Donald
support
Trump
it.
said that at
You
January
guys deny
6th.
it.
He said it during January
After
6th.
he sat and watched it happen for 3
Oh,
hours.
well, after
when
the
he was
guy died,
only
now you're
person-
sorry about your
What-
rhetoric.
Who said I was sorry?
Yeah, you're not
Excuse me.
sorry,
Please stop
exactly.
projecting onto me.
Not
I never
sorry
said I was
at
sorry
all.
about anything.
Yeah, you don't-
I've not said that. Yeah, unlike you, I have a spine over the things that I say, okay? Number one.
okay.
Number two, Donald Trump and your side are the ones that have engaged in divisive rhetoric for years. This idea that saying Donald Trump is un-American when Donald Trump himself says that he would be a day one
Divisive
dictator,
rhetoric
that he would
is fine.
suspend the Constitution. I'm sorry,
So,
if the divisive
there's a
rhetoric
difference
speaks
between
quoting
divisive
Donald
rhetoric
Trump
and
back at you,
assassinating the
that's
guy.
Donald Trump's problem. Maybe he
Your
shouldn't say
rhetoric
things
has
that are
led to
un-American.
assassination attempts, and one of the guys who died there, you don't even give a shit, and I've said this multiple times. And at the same time, you're like, oh, I love America. What kind of bullshit is this, Destiny?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
when you guys start
unbelievable.
taking accountability for some of the crazy things that you say, come and talk to me, okay? Come and talk to me.
So just to recap there on what Andrew was talking about, here's some of Destiny's rhetoric about Corey Compratore, the fireman who was killed at the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when Trump was nearly assassinated himself.
Fuck it, fuck the dude, the firefighter guy, fuck Trump, fuck the people that support him. I just want you to know, okay, just in case you're confused or it seems like I'm, you don't, whatever. If one of you were in the crowd and you're a conservative fan of mine and you end up, getting blown away or whatever the fuck, I'm making fun of you the next day on Twitter. I am 100%.
So he wants to say this: take absolutely no accountability whatsoever, not walk it back, and then turn around and criticize the MAGA crowd or anybody else in the world for that matter about their rhetoric. Yeah, I mean, I would really quickly dismount my high horse if I was you, Destiny. But it is pretty funny to watch Destiny when Andrew comes up, because I know for a fact that he would not have expecting Andrew to be in that room that day. He kind of poos his pants when he sees him a little bit, because every time they've tangled in the past, Andrew has violated him. It was no different this time. So what Destiny did here was he just tried to spurg and filibuster the whole time so that Andrew actually couldn't get a point out.
Now,
Stop
because
spurging.
they're
Stop
convinced that
spurging.
the federal government's going
Stop
to take their
spurging.
houses.
Stop spurging.
You are, you
Stop
just engage in all the time.
spurging.
So anyways, same topic, but on to the next bit now.
All right, I want to go back to kind of your original claim, which
Disinformation.
Well, can you restate your original claim?
I think MAGA thrives on disinformation. They are in a totally different reality now than they ever have been.
So that actually wasn't your original claim. Your original claim was that
The MAGA movement wouldn't exist without the amount of disinformation. Yeah, something
Right.
like that.
Okay. So how can you possibly know that?
Well, I can't know through all possible worlds if they wouldn't.
Right. Exactly. So right off the bat, your initial claim is false.
Okay, well, if this was a philosophy 101 class, then you've completely and totally debunked me, sir. Yeah.
Wow. Great. I've debunked it. Great.
So well done there, debunking that question. I mean, it's a good point, to be honest. I mean, how can he possibly know if the MAGA movement would exist if it wasn't for disinformation or whatever the claim is? I mean, you can't know. It's all speculation. So solid there. And as much as the debate is over now, Destiny had to pick someone for the last 10 minutes to come up and debate him. And he picked the guy who we covered before, who was doing pretty well on the border, smart guy. And I really had faith in this guy until he went right ahead and did this.
But like our agreements are going to be very roundabout. We're not getting here the same way. But I think the creation of the Space Force was good. I obviously all the conservatives hate it, but I thought warp speed was a tremendous achievement of capitalism, of pharmaceuticals, of the United States and U.S. leadership. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think the big picture though, and can we give him a round of applause?
No, I don't want a round of applause. Oh my God.
I'm a big believer, Stephen, that when we come together as a country and have conversations, difficult conversations like this, we may not walk away saying, well, I agree with Stephen, or I agree with James, or I agree with any of the folks here, but you walk away saying, that's a person, that's an American, we can disagree agreeably, and I might understand for just a moment their perspectives. I want to thank you for being here. I think that the biggest thing for the country going forward, in a sense, is how do we have more debate, not less, more disagreement, not less?
Unfortunately, I totally disagree with you.
Yeah.
I was there a while ago. It's not enough to just have conversations anymore. I think we have to start taking steps in an actual direction. I think right now we are talking ourselves off a ledge. And I notice a lot of times when I have challenging conversations with people, I get all of these comments that pop up, whether it's me talking to Peterson, Shapiro, Owens, of like, what a great civil conversation. But at the end of the day, nobody's mind comes away changed and everybody still feels the same way. And we're still accelerating off of each other faster than we ever have been before. But at least we're having good conversations on the way down to the base of the cliff, I guess.
So just a terrible, terrible idea to start clapping for Destiny. And I mean, this actually tells you a lot this moment about the people in the circle. I mean, we're going to clap for this guy, the guy who laughed at Corey Comperatore's death, an American patriot, the guy who just not even accepts, but is the biggest cheerleader in the culture war for all of the degeneracy that is tearing at the fabric of our society. I mean, he is not your friend. He has no concern with finding middle ground with you, even though that's supposed to be what Jubilee are doing here. No. He hates you. He does not give a single shit about your opinion. All he wants to do is to defeat conservatives in debates by any means possible. And he will use all kinds of bad faith techniques and sophistry to achieve those ends and not lose a wink of sleep over it. The second you turn around and start applauding somebody like this, they put the knife in your back. And that's pretty much what happened to our friend there. But luckily, guys, we do have a few real ones in the circle, but not many. Not many of them were able to see the subversion that was taking place and be discerning and wise enough to not applaud this little gremlin. You see, in this shot of all the clapping that's happening, we only have three, Andrew, Glenn, and Luke, that were wise enough and discerning enough to see the danger. You see, guys, this is a good litmus test for army rankings, because if you put these people into a battalion together and they had to go and fight a war, boom, that's the test. You've already got your three generals, because they know the enemy. As Sun Tzu says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. So guys, never clap for these degenerates. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this one. This one is demonetized, guys, so if you could like it, try and get it out there as much as possible. Unfortunately, Jubilee doesn't let us monetize, but whatever. If you could subscribe to the channel, that would also be fantastic. You can find me on Instagram right here. I'm going to try and grab it right there. Jake RattlesnakeTV. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.